What's the point of shooting expired film? Today we're going to be photographing with some expired 35mm film. When you're photographing with expired film, there's a few things that you need to be aware of. The problem with shooting with expired film is that once it's expired, it's a lot less sensitive to light. When shooting expired film, I like to just add 1, maybe 2 stops of extra light in order to make sure that the image actually renders out onto the film. A lot of times when you're shooting expired film, you're gonna get muddied blacks, you're gonna get blown out highlights, you're gonna get some strange artifacts or unique things that just happen in the film, and that's just because of the age of the film. Maybe the film was kept in a hot car for some of its life. Another really good thing to do when shooting expired film is to just experiment. Just go out and have this idea in your head that none of these images are going to be portfolio quality. None of these are going to be the best images that you've ever shot. Creating a really nice image out of expired film can be pretty difficult because it's just not going to be as clean of an image. It's not going to be as razor sharp. The contrast might be off a little bit. The shadows might be really dulled and kind of grayed out. Sometimes you don't get a lot of really good contrast or detail in the highlights and they all just kind of mush together. And so experiment with it. Just go out and shoot unique things. Shoot things that you wouldn't typically shoot on standard film. Try to just be a little bit more playful with it. Take your shutter speed and slow it way down. Let in a whole bunch of light. Just see what happens. And I've noticed that that's a really good way to, when you are working with expired film, to sometimes get some images that are really unique, that are really fun, that are something that you probably wouldn't have shot if you were just out there trying to make beautiful images on standard film. The next thing that you can do when you're working with expired film is to not be afraid of some post-processing magic. A lot of times when I shoot expired film, the straight out of camera images are a little bit dull. During post-processing, if you want to play with some local adjustments, bring up the highlights just on the left part of the image, but crush all of your blacks on the right side of the image, I've noticed that this can give the image some extra new life. It kind of adds a little bit of depth, some unique perspective into the image. When shooting expired film, you just have to be able to embrace the imperfections of this medium. Sometimes it's going to be garbage, sometimes it's going to be really beautiful, and sometimes shooting on expired film has given me some of my favorite results that I've ever had. But for the vast majority of it, there's going to be problems, there's going to be imperfections, there's going to be blemishes, there's going to be dust particles all across the film, maybe there's going to be streaks on it, maybe there's going to be a whole bunch of strange banding, or quite often you're just going to get a mushy image. If you know that the film stock you're using tends to kind of just mush out when it expires, meaning it doesn't have crisp lines, the contrast kind of goes down a little bit, lean into that. Go out and shoot mushy subjects, or go out and shoot some really sharp line architecture stuff, but with a film that's going to mush those things out. See what that does. Could be a lot of fun. Could be some really beautiful imagery. Could be a strange juxtaposition of really soft lines when you expect them to be crisp and clean. The number one most important thing when working with expired film is to have a really good development lab. That's why I use Essential Photo Supply here in Salt Lake City. I have given them some of the worst images ever, and every single time, without fail, they produce some of the best development results ever. And I've tried almost every lab that there is within the Western United States. I've mailed them into a whole bunch of different places. I've tried all the ones that are local. Nobody is as good as the guys at Essential Photo Supply. They're fast, and their quality is just absolutely unbeatable. Basically, shooting expired film is just fun. It's not professional work, it's not portfolio work, it's just a way to get out and kind of exercise your art brain a little bit. You're working with an imperfect medium with less than ideal conditions and very unknown results. That's what gets you into that creative headspace. That's what makes it so you can think a little bit outside of the box and change your perspective on what you typically shoot and how you typically shoot it. Give yourself the ability to just go out and make a whole bunch of mistakes and see what happens. I ran into a problem while I was shooting this 100 speed film. It's a 100 speed film, so it's already a light hungry film. It needs a lot of light in order to render the image out. And so when I went out and shot this, it was later in the day, the sun was starting to set, and I was operating kind of in a lot of shadow environment. And so being that it was a 100 speed film, I opted to take my 55mm f2.2 lens, and I pretty much had to shoot at f2.2 the entire time, because there just wasn't enough light that I could actually get a fast enough shutter speed that I wouldn't have a whole bunch of motion blur. And in these images, you can see that there is quite a bit of motion blur in a lot of what I was shooting. I couldn't really get a shutter speed much higher than 1/15 or 1/30. A couple times when I was shooting directly into the sunlight, I was able to shoot, 1/125. But because I needed so much light due to the expired film, it really limited me in what I could do. And that limiting factor is part of the reason that I love some of these images so much. I really enjoy, you can see the jittery of my hands, you can see the blur of cars, you can see the speed of moving objects within the image. And yeah, you can get that on non-expired film, but I didn't have non-expired film. This was the only film I had, and so that's what we went out and shot with. Photographing on expired 35mm film can yield unique and unpredictable results due to changes in chemical composition over time. Here's some tips to consider when shooting with expired film. First off, exposure compensation. Expired film might have reduced sensitivity to light. Adjust your camera settings by overexposing slightly, by 1, maybe 2 stops, to compensate for a potential loss of sensitivity. Experimentation. Play around with different shooting conditions, such as varied lighting, environments, and subjects. Expired film often reacts uniquely to different situations, so experimentation can lead to surprising results. Post-processing. Embrace post-processing tools to enhance or manipulate the images further. Adjusting colors, contrast, and exposure in editing software can help salvage or enhance the captured shots. Developing. I have to thank the team at Essential Photo Supply for making this video even remotely possible.